Hey everybody, this is Brian with Bear Cards 34, back with another round of show and tell for the 1989 Topps and Friends. Just real quick, I forgot to mention when I did the Rams that Greg Bell had a 1,000 yard club card. He was a 1,000-yard runner with both the Buffalo Bills and the Rams, and one of my favorite backs back in the 90s. Also, just as a reminder on the right, I'll be ripping another pack of 89 Topps at the end of this video. So next up for us with this video, we've got the Colts. These guys were 8-8 the year these cards came out in 1989. They did not make the playoffs. The late Ron Meyer was the head coach, and for that year, Eric Dickerson did have a 1,000 yard club card. He also had this record breaker card that I mentioned in the first video for most consecutive seasons to start a career with 1,000 yards. And he was also the leading rusher in the NFL with over 1,600 yards. And so his card is highlighted for that as well. And so for his card as a Hall of Famer with the Colts, we have the 1989 Topps All-Pro card. I really like that card. I think that's a great picture. I always remember him with those goggles that were unique. You know, Thurl Bailey, as a Jazz fan, Thurl Bailey used to wear those as well. Alright, so first up here we've got Clarence Verden. This is his NFL rookie card. He was actually a third-round pick by the Washington Redskins back in 1984 and was a part of the Super Bowl 22 championship team. However, he mostly, during those first few years, played with the Houston Gamblers. He was a really talented return man. He played with Jim Kelly, and in his 2 years there, he caught 100 passes for 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns, and he was all USFL in 1985. I'm actually planning to do a USFL show and tell video one of these days. I have the entire set for this second year that the cards came out in 85, but I'm missing 2 cards for 1984, Jim Kelly and then also a Herschel Walker. So once I get those, and those are not cheap, but once I have those in the collection, I'll go ahead and make a show and tell video for the USFL as well. But anyway, Verden played very well. After his 2 years in Washington, once he was out of the USFL, he then played 6 years with the Colts, and that's where he had most of his success. He was named to 2 Pro Bowls, and he was also known for his touchdown celebration that was known as the Verdance. But a very talented return man for sure. Next up, we've got Chris Chandler. This is his rookie card. He ended up having a 17-year NFL career. He was best known when he played with the Atlanta Falcons, and in 1988, that team went 14-2 and made it to Super Bowl 33, where they eventually lost to Denver. But he was a good quarterback. He had some really good success as a starting quarterback for a handful of years, as well as a backup. He even played with my Chicago Bears near the end of his career, and actually started for 8 different NFL teams. He was a third-round pick back in '88, but he only spent 2 years with the Colts. It's not that they didn't necessarily like the guy. However, they ended up with the #1 pick in 1990 and selected Jeff George, so they didn't feel the need to keep Chris Chandler after that. He ended his career with over 28,000 yards. He had 170 touchdowns. And just for the old-school collectors, he also married former 49ers quarterback John Brody's daughter. So that's a nice little reference for an old school player from back in the day. Next up, we've got Keith Taylor, and this is Keith Taylor's only rookie card, I believe. He had a 9-year career with the Colts, Saints, and Washington. He had 13 interceptions. It's not that he didn't play much, but the only reason I bring him up for this video is just as a note that he is the brother of John Taylor of the 49ers. Alright, next up we've got Andre Badmoon Rison. He was also had the nickname of Spider-Man, I think, when he played with the Chiefs, but he was well on his way to a Hall of Fame career, and even still, he was a nominee for the 2022 Hall of Fame class. He's just one of those borderline guys. But I'll tell you, when he was in his prime, he was great. And the first handful of years to start his career were as good as anybody had been. He was the 22nd pick in 1989 out of Michigan State. He played from 1989 to 2000, but then he also played in 2004 with the CFL, with the Toronto Argonauts, and he's one of only a few players with both a Super Bowl title and a Grey Cup championship. So his first year of 89, he was with the Colts. He did really, really well. He had over 800 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was a member of the all-rookie team. And then the next year, Andre Rison, as well as all-pro lineman Chris Hinton, were traded, along with the fifth round pick, and a 91 first-round pick, to move up in the first round to pick Jeff George with the number 1 spot. So Ryzen left the Colts for Jeff George to come in. Now I will tell you, he had 5 very good years with Atlanta. So in those 5 years, he was near the top of almost every receiving category. In 1993, he led the NFL with 15 touchdowns. And he was only the 5th player in the history of the NFL to score 60 touchdowns in his first 6 seasons. So like I said, he had a great start to his career. In 1994, his girlfriend at the time, and this is something I can't not think of Andre Rison and remember this, but TLC's Lisa Left Eye Lopez, the late Left Eye, burned down Rison's house to the ground. So she had, there had been some kind of an argument. It sounds like the relationship was pretty toxic. But she had set fire to a pair of Andre Rison's shoes in a bathtub, and then that fire spread throughout the mansion and just destroyed it. So anyway, he signed with the Browns in '94 as a free agent, but he also played with the Jaguars, the Packers, where he won a Super Bowl, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. He finished his career as a 4-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. He was the MVP of the '94 Pro Bowler. And he ended his career with 743 catches for 10,205 yards, 84 touchdowns. He also rushed for 23 touchdowns. And he holds an NFL record for catching a touchdown pass with 7 different teams. So anyway, just a great player, Andre Rison. Next up, we've got the New York Jets, who the year these cards came out in 1989 had a pretty poor season. They went 4-12. They were coached by Joe Walton, who actually passed away last year. There were no Hall of Famers featured in the team set that year for tops, but they do have a 1,000-yard club player who was an excellent wide receiver, Al Toon. That's his 1,000-yard club card. Al Toon also led the NFL in receiving catches. He had 93 that year, and so he and the excellent Henry Ellard were the receiving leaders that season. As far as kind of specialty cards that year, there was the Joe Namath card from Pro Set as an announcer. They also had the underrated and excellent Wesley Walker, who started around 1977 and had a really, really solid career through the 80s. Fast receiver. And I always loved this card because this is him near the end of his career. 12 seasons in the NFL at that point, but they still made a speed burner card of him because he's just a very fast receiver. One other card of note for this set would be this right here. This is a Freeman Mcneil. This was a prototype action pack card. It came out in 1989 as well. This is different than that test run that had the Bears and the Redskins and the Giants. This was just a prototype, and if I remember right, it's just Freeman Mcneil and Phil Simms who I think they made these for. Freeman Mcneil, the year that the entire set came out, 1990, the Jets team set, Freeman Mcneil didn't even have a card that year. So it's kind of cool to have this. I thought this was just kind of a little bit of an oddball card and wanted to have that for the collection. All right, next up we've got Eric McMillan. This is his rookie card. He was a 3rd-round pick in 1988 and was the Defensive Rookie of the Year and a second-team All-Pro. He actually led the team, or led the AFC in interceptions with 8. So this is his interception leader card that he had as a rookie. So just a great start to his career there. He was the first Jets player in team history to play in a Pro Bowl each of his first 2 seasons. Now those were his only 2 Pro Bowls, but he was a very talented player. After 5 years with the Jets, he spent 93 with the Eagles, Browns, and Chiefs. And then all of a sudden, 3 years later, he popped up on Denver's practice squad but never actually made the team. He's the son of former NFL offensive tackle Ernie McMillan, so it definitely runs in the family's blood. His cousin Howard Richards was a first-round pick of the Cowboys back in 1981. Eric had 5 interception returns for touchdowns and averaged almost 28 yards per return on interceptions, which is, I believe, still an NFL record. I don't know what happened that last year to see him in 93 on 3 different teams and then just out of the league after such a great start. I couldn't really find anything on that, but definitely had made a name for himself for those first few years. Next up, another really talented defensive player that was drafted in 1988 for the Jets. We have James Hasty. He had a 14-year career, but he's best known for his years with the Chiefs. In 1997, he was an All-Pro. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler, and like McMillan, he was a part of that All-Rookie team in 88. Very much known for his aggressive bump and run defense. Just a really talented defender who had a nice long career. I'll just briefly mention Marion Barber Jr. This is his rookie card. He played 7 years with the Jets. He was a second-round pick in 1981 out of Minnesota. And I just thought I'd mention him because he is the father of the late Marion Barber III, who was a really talented running back, made a Pro Bowl with the Cowboys. He played 2011 with the Chicago Bears. Unfortunately, Marion Barber III passed away very recently. But this was his dad, Marion Barber, who had 1 card, and that was his card for the Jets. Next up, we've got Jeff Lagaman, and what's of note is, as you can see from his score rookie card, he was drafted when he was only 11 years old. So kind of a cool note, Jeopardy kind of question for you there. He was the 14th pick in the 89 draft. Defensive end out of Virginia. He had a 10-year career with the Jets and the Jaguars. He was one of the Jaguars' expansion pickups. And he's thought of, when he came into the NFL, they thought he was somewhat undersized. In fact, go look at Mel Kiper Jr.'s coverage of the 89 draft and you'll see what he thought of Jeff Lagaman. It wasn't great, but he actually had a really good career. He was a second-team All-Pro in 91. All-Rookie in 89, and he ended his career with almost 500 tackles and quite a few quarterback sacks as well. Next up, we've got Kyle Clifton, one of the more underrated defensive players of his time. Unfortunately, he did not have a rookie card with Topps that year, but Pro Set and Score did include him. He was a 3rd-round draft pick in 1984, and it took until 89 to get a card made. But in his 13-year career, he led the NFL in tackles in 1985, 1986, and 1988. He was the 2nd leading tackler in NFL history when he retired with almost 1,500 tackles, and he's still the Jets' all-time leader. So if you want to talk about a player who was underrated, not just in his career, but even in the card products, the fact that he led the NFL in tackling in 85 and 86 and never got any cards made by Topps those years, and not even this year after, the 88 season as well. Pretty interesting there. Now for the Denver Broncos, who had a really good year in 1989. They went 11-5 the year these cards came out. They lost in the Super Bowl to the 49ers. And we have Dan Reeves on the left, who was the head coach at the time. He passed away on New Year's Day this year. Just a couple of the specialty cards. We had Tom Jackson, who I really liked as an analyst for football. They made his Pro Set card. They also had a great combos, Vance Johnson and Mark Jackson. You could just as easily put Ricky Nattiel on here as well, the 3 amigos, but those guys were a lot of fun to watch. And Hall of Famers included John Elway, one of the greats of all time. And speaking of greats of all time, but you had Tony Dorsett on his final year of cards during his playing career. So that's him with the Broncos. And then there's the record breaker card that I had showed earlier in the set. And as you guys know, I like to include my local guys. So right here, Rulon Jones. This is his last card that was made. Pro Set also featured him. What was interesting is this is the 1989 Topps set. He was featured, but he retired right before the start of the 1989 season. So they did make a couple cards of him. However, he didn't play that year. He was a very talented player, two-time All-Pro, born and raised in Utah, Salt Lake City, went to Utah State, my alma mater, so just a big fan of Rulon Jones. And then next up, we've got Simon Fletcher. So these are his rookie cards, and he has Topps and Score and Pro Set, which is good to see. So this is his rookie card, even though he started as a second-round pick in 1985. He had a great 11-year career with Denver, and he almost made the 100 quarterback sack club. He had 97.5 when he finished, and he once shared an NFL record with 10 consecutive games with a quarterback sack. It's been broken since then, but that is an impressive record, and he is a part of the Broncos Ring of Fame. So next up, we've got Greg Cragen. This is his one and only rookie card. So along with Rulon Jones, this is another Utah State Aggie alum. Greg Cragen was a nose tackle, born in Chicago, go Bears, and he played at USU. He went undrafted back in 1985. He tried out with Denver but was cut. However, the next year they invited him back to training camp, and he made the team. And then all he did was play 13 years, 9 of those with Denver. He also played with the Panthers and Chiefs, and he was a two-time first-team All-Pro and a second-team All-Pro. So from like 1989 to 1992-93, he was one of the best in the NFL, and just a very talented player. I was lucky enough to go to a game at Utah State where he was inducted into the Aggie Hall of Fame, and they did a big salute for him at halftime, so that was cool to see. Next up is Steve Atwater, the 20th pick out of Arkansas. He was a great player. His final year, I think it was 1999, he played with the Jets, but otherwise it was a Hall of Fame career with the Broncos, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 3-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, part of the 90s All-Decade team. And I really like the back of some of these cards where it had a picture of them as a young rookie with their head coach showing their jersey, just as things were starting to build towards that rookie season. He's probably most known for, in 1990, on a Monday Night Football game against Christian Okoye, the Nigerian Nightmare. That is just a big bruising back who just, he would make defenders pay when they would hit him. And there was a play where Atwater stopped Okoye just dead in his track, knocked him over, and Mike Shanahan, a coach, he had mentioned, he said that's the hit that people will remember him for. And I really think that's true. That was a signature play for sure. Now, the Broncos had another really good pick. He was a first-round supplemental draft pick, but Bobby Humphrey, he only had a 5-year career, but his first 2 were very memorable. He had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons to start his career. He was a very talented running back, good out of the backfield. I really thought he was on his way to being a Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, after he had an all-rookie first season with over 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, his second year he made the Pro Bowl with over 1,200 yards and 7 more touchdowns. I believe he was also the first Bronco to ever rush for 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. Unfortunately, in 1991, he held out for a new contract, and the Broncos had a team policy that they did not negotiate, and they refused. And so he held out. It lasted well into the season. In fact, it didn't end until week 14. But by then, Gaston Green, who had come over from the Rams, was on his way to a 1,000-yard season of his own. And so Bobby Humphrey was viewed as being dispensable. And so in the offseason, they traded him to the Dolphins for running back Sammy Smith. And he actually did fairly well that year with Miami. He had almost 1,000 yards combined rushing and receiving in 1992, but his playing drastically decreased, and he was out of football after the 93 season. He tried to make a comeback 2 years later with the Bills, but he didn't make the team. One thing that's pretty cool, though, is his son, Marlon Humphrey, is a very talented, in fact, he's been an All-Pro cornerback for the Ravens, first-round draft pick back in 2017. So it's, again, nice to see the family line continue, and it also is a way to make me feel pretty old. Okay, so our last team for today will be the Washington Redskins, now the Washington Commanders. They went 10-6, finished third in the NFC East, and because that was third in the NFC East, they did not make the playoffs in 1989. Head coach Joe Gibbs, you see there on the left. One of the Hall of Famers that was highlighted in that set was the great Art Monk. Ricky Sanders also had a 1,000-yard season, and they produced this really nice Darrell Green speed burner card. Man, he was fast. And then I just love the image on this. This is why, you know, for me, I prefer good quality cards that have a picture not just of the player but actually the background. I like to see the field, see the plays, see the history of what's going on. Don't get me wrong, I love the new shiny stuff with all the effects in the background too, but I wish they did a little more of this. And I know Optic, and even, you know, you can see here in the Marlon Humphreys card, they do include some of the background. It's been darkened and it's not really highlighted as much. But I just love those old images that really show you the game as well. So one other specialty card, Joe Theismann, who was an analyst at the time. So they also included that with Pro Set. So here we have Jamie Morris rookie card. He was actually a record-breaking running back out of Michigan, 4th-round pick. He had 436 yards as a rookie, which is why he was able to get cards made for Topps and Pro Set. Score did not include him, but the action-packed test run did, and so we do have an action-packed rookie card of his as well. So he set an NFL record that is still an NFL record for most carries or rushes in a game with 45 back in December of 1988 versus the Bengals. He had two 100-yard games. With that 45 carries, he rushed for 152 yards. He's also the younger brother of New York Giant running back and Pro Bowler Joe Morris. So, you know, while he had a promising rookie season, the Redskins traded for Gerald Riggs and Ernest Biner the next season. And so as a result of that, Jamie Morris kind of got lost out of the shuffle. And, you know, he was out of the NFL after the 1990 season. His second year, he only averaged 2.7 yards a carry. And so Riggs and Biner were able to easily take over that position. Next up, we've got Mark Rippian, rookie. So Mark Rippian was a very talented quarterback. He was better known for throwing the really accurate deep balls more so than his play, you know, within the 10-yard line, you know, of the field. He was a 6th-round draft pick in 1986 out of Washington State. Also the first Canadian-born quarterback to both start in an NFL game and be named Super Bowl MVP. He won Super Bowl 26 after the 91 season, and that's what I best remember him for, was that Super Bowl run. He ended up battling with Doug Williams and eventually got the starting spot and took over. So he, in 1989, threw for 3,700 yards, led the team to a 10-6 record, and he made the Pro Bowl. 91 was his best year. He threw for 3,600 yards, 28 touchdowns, made his second trip to the Pro Bowl, and he was the Super Bowl champ and MVP versus the Bills. By 93, a knee injury in Week 2 versus the Cardinals got him on the sideline. The team only went 4-12, and he was released after the 1993 season. He also played with as a journeyman for the Browns, Eagles, Rams, Falcons, Colts. His nephew is Brett Rypien, who was a Boise State quarterback, currently on the Broncos. And they also did include one of these action-pack cards for Mark Rippian as well. So he's one of those players who had 4 rookie cards that year. Next up, we've got Mark May's rookie. He was actually a first-round pick in 1981 after an All-American career at Pitt. He even won the Outland Trophy winner, which is the best interior lineman in the country. A very talented player and had a great career. It was surprising that it took that long for him to get a card made, because in the 80s, linemen frequently would have cards made, especially the best ones. He was a well-known member of the Hogs offensive line, and he was named one of the 70 greatest Redskins. In 88, he went to the Pro Bowl, 2-time Super Bowl champ, and I also remember him for his broadcasting career after his playing days were over as well. And now to wrap up, this is Brian Davis's rookie card. He just had the one. This is Pro Set. So he intercepted John Elway in the Super Bowl for the win. That was kind of his big signature play. But the reason I'm including him is, just as a little trivia thing, he is the very last player ever to tackle Walter Payton. A lot of nerve, I know, but he did it. That was Payton's last game, a playoff game against the Redskins, and the last time he was ever tackled was by Brian Davis. All right, so let's go ahead and rip into this. If you guys are still here with me, thank you very much for sticking with me on this little journey that we take. So here we go. The back card with the gum damage is Steeler Warren Williams. And now we've got a 1,000 yard club of Eddie Brown. I'd love to get like a Michael Irvin rookie or a Tim Brown rookie, Thurman Thomas. I mean, there's some really nice rookie cards in this first series. I mean, there's an Andre Reed, nice. You're not going to pull the, you know, Barry Sanders and all those guys, Troy Aikman, because they were only part of the tops traded. But there's still some really good rookies you can find in here. Vai Sekahema, former BYU guy. Doug Williams, Greg Bell, the late Carl Eckern, and Lars Tate, who, you know, he didn't do much in his NFL career, but he had this really awesome, if I can find it, I'll include it in the link. He had a really awesome play where he kind of like went up and over a guy and didn't get tackled and ran in for a score. It was a really, really cool run. So there we go. Nothing too big in there. It was nice to get the Andre Reed. But I don't know, I mean, other than that, you know, that's not the greatest pack, but I do like the Andre Reed, so that's nice. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be back in another week with another show and tell. I think I might be able to fit it all in one, but I'll probably just do 2 more for the 1989 set. We're having some of the big ones. So Topps, they did the set by record. So the best teams were at the start of the set and the worst teams were at the end. But what that means is the teams like the Lions and the Cowboys, who have, you know, players like Barry Sanders and Troy Aikman and all those great players, they're at the end of the video because they were the teams at the end of the season at the bottom of the stats. So they got the best rookies. So that'll be kind of fun to go over those pretty soon. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll be back with more in the near future. And as always, go Bears.